Today, I'll show you the best flight booking apps that you can use for free. Plus, we'll cover two apps that most people swear by, but I think are totally overrated. Many of these apps have similar features, but there are a few special things that makes each one unique. So instead of telling you every feature of every app, which would take forever, I'm just going to cover the special features for each one that will help you find cheap flights. You'll see that sometimes the best flight app to use depends on the type of trip you're going to take. Stick to the end for two super important bonus tips that you need to keep in mind no matter which one of these apps that you choose. Let's go. First app on the list is Kayak, which has some pretty nifty features for helping you find the cheapest flights. They have a cool thing called Kayak Hacker Fares, which basically is instead of forcing you to book a round-trip ticket with just one airline, they play matchmaker and they mix and match different one-way flights with different airlines to find you the cheapest flights possible. For example, if I needed a round trip from where I am right now in Cali, Colombia to Chicago, on Kayak, you might find the way to Chicago is with Spirit and the way home is with Avianca. You also might find options where the first leg of your flight is with one airline and then you have a layover and a connection, and then the second leg is with another airline. This allows for way more flight combinations and potentially cheaper prices, but there are some things that you need to keep in mind. The first is baggage fees, because if you're switching airlines all the time, you're going to need to recheck your bags, and depending on the ticket, you may have to pay for checked bags more than once. To help you compare prices easier, Kayak has a fee assistant, which basically allows you to select how many bags that you plan to take when you're searching for your flight, and it will automatically update how much your baggage cost will cost. This is way easier than opening up a bunch of different tabs for the different airlines and scouring their websites to see what their baggage policies is. That said, while using Kayak to calculate the baggage fees is super convenient, I would still double check before buying anything. Also, if you're going to be switching airlines on different legs of your flight, you want to make sure that you'll have enough time to recheck your bags, because you're not going to be able to just get off the airplane and walk to your next gate. You actually have to pick up your baggage, go to the check-in counter, recheck them in, go through security again, and so it takes longer, so you need a longer layover to make it work. Also, if you're going to buy these flights directly from the airlines, which we'll talk about in just a second, I recommend opening up two different tabs at the same time and doing the checkout process at the same time with both of your flights. That way you'll know that both of them are actually available, because you wouldn't want to just buy one leg of your flight and then go to the other airline's website and realize that it's not available. Another cool feature that Kayak has is the bag scanning tool, which basically lets you scan your bag using video on your phone, and then it tells you the dimensions of the bag to make sure that it's going to fit for your carry-on. I'm making a video doing some experiments to see how accurate this tool actually is, and so if you'd like to see that one, make sure to subscribe. Lastly, I really like the Explore tool in Kayak, which in my opinion is even better than some of the other popular apps that most people recommend that we'll get to in a second. Explore tools like this basically allow you to set your departure airport and then quickly see prices all around the world for different flights to see which ones are the cheapest and to give you ideas for your next destination. I really like Kayak's Explore tool because they have some unique different filters that you can use to quickly search for exactly what you're looking for, and they also allow you to switch between map view and list view, which is really handy. For example, in list view, it automatically lists out in order of price the cheapest places that you can fly to from your airport. Kayak also gives you a little bit more flexibility with the date filter, because some of the other ones just allow you to search for a certain month, but Kayak allows you to search for multiple different months and search the cheapest prices during those months. The downside to Kayak's Explore feature is that they only do round-trip flights and you can't select one-way flights. Momondo is the second flight app on the list, and Momondo and Kayak were actually both acquired by a company called the Priceline Group, and so now their apps are basically exactly the same. The layout, the features, even the exact text is all the same, and so basically it comes down to which one you like more. By looking at App Store downloads and reviews, Kayak seems to be more popular, but both of these are super huge apps. Normally, when I'm searching for flights, after I find the best dates to fly using my favorite flight search engine, which we'll get to in a second, I then run those dates through Momondo to see if it comes up with any cheaper prices. Now for one of the popular apps that I don't use, and I might get a lot of hate for this, but that is Skyscanner. Skyscanner is a big favorite for many people, but here's why I don't use their app. First of all, one of people's favorite features is the To Everywhere feature, which is basically you can select the destination that you want to go to and set it for everywhere, and so it searches the whole world. It's kind of the same as the Explore feature in Kayak, but to me, it's not as nice as Kayak's Explore feature. Back in the day, I think that this feature might have been unique to Skyscanner, and that's why it became so popular, but now that other apps have them and actually do it better, I recommend the other apps. With Skyscanner's app, you don't have as many filter options as you do, for example, in Momondo or Kayak, and you can only set it to search for 1 month at a time. Also, when you go through and click on a destination that looks interesting to you, it doesn't show you what airlines is flying. It just shows you a bunch of flights without the airlines, and so it's just a little bit more clunky. The advantage, though, that Skyscanner has over Momondo and Kayak is that it does allow you to search for one-way flights. So if you're looking for a one-way flight, then Skyscanner actually will be more helpful. But other than that, I'm not really sure why people love and use the Skyscanner app so much. If you're a big Skyscanner fan, please leave me a comment below explaining what is so special about it, because when I went through the app and tried and tested it out compared to the other ones, I was unimpressed. Next up on the list is Skip Lagged, and this is for people who like to live on the wild side. The specialty of this app is finding flights where you can get off at your layover and it's actually cheaper than buying a flight directly to that destination. So to give you a quick, totally hypothetical example, let's say that you wanted to fly from Miami to Austin, Texas, but it may just so happen that a flight from Miami all the way to Los Angeles, which has a layover in Texas, is actually cheaper than the flight to Texas. In this case, you could buy the flight to Los Angeles and skip lag and just get off at your layover, which is really your final destination. This strategy usually works best in the US or in Europe, where there's a bunch of different connection options to choose from. It's not so great for long intercontinental flights where there aren't really many connection options. Now, this concept sounds pretty clever, but there are several caveats to keep in mind before you use it. First, you can't check luggage, because if you do and you get off at your layover, your luggage is going to continue flying and you're going to be screwed. You also want to pack light and try to board the plane as soon as possible and not wait to the very last second, because you want to make sure that there's space in the overhead bins for your luggage and that they don't ask you to check your carry-on bag if the overhead bins are full. Also, this really only works on one-way flights, because as soon as you skip a leg of your flight, then it cancels the rest of your reservation. Next, you should prepare an excuse ahead of time for why you have to take this exact trajectory in case the flight gets delayed or canceled or something and they try to rebook you or reroute you on a different route. Because if they reroute you and you're no longer taking a layover in the same place that you thought you would, then you're screwed. Lastly, and most importantly, is to not abuse this option. If you just do it once or twice, it's really hard for me to see how you could get in trouble, because people miss flights all the time on accident. But if you abuse it and you do it every single week on the same airline, you're asking for trouble. There's even stories of American Airlines and United sending huge bills to people that they realize were doing skip lagging. And they really have no legal right to do this, because skip lagging isn't illegal, it's just against the airline policies. But it's a situation you still want to avoid. That said, the people that this happened to are people who have skip lagged like 30 times or 50 times on the same airline, and so they're making it super obvious. That said, to be safe, it's a good idea not to add your frequent flyer number when you're buying your ticket, because that is something they can control. They could freeze your frequent flyer miles if you have 100,000 miles or something with that airline, and they realize that you're doing this, abusing this policy, then they could freeze your account and you lose your points. Lastly, it's important to keep in mind that this can annoy other passengers as well, because if you do forget and you checked a bag or something by accident, then you got off at your layover and there's a bag on the airplane but the passenger wasn't on the airplane, that's a big red flag and it can cause delays. And so you don't want to make everyone else on the plane wait just because you're trying to skip lag. So it's a pretty controversial strategy. Leave me a comment below what you think about it, if it's good or if it's bad. The second popular app that I no longer recommend is Hopper. Hopper's big claim to fame is that it used historical price data to predict if the price of a flight is going to go up or down in the future, and that helps you decide when the best time is to buy a certain flight. There's nothing worse than buying a flight and then realizing a couple weeks later that the price dropped by a couple $100s. I used to use Hopper specifically for this feature, but as with many other features, now the other apps are catching on and you can find it in other apps as well. For example, Kayak and Momondo also both give you price predictions based on historical data now, And the question is, which ones are more accurate? I can't tell you for sure, but when I did one test searching for flights with every single one of these apps, Hopper ended up coming out the more expensive. That said, your mileage may vary based on the destinations you're looking for. I've heard other people that say Hopper is the best. I was searching for flights between Colombia and Panama, and it turns out that Hopper doesn't include one of the budget airlines in their search results, and that's why it was coming up more expensive. Hopper also offers some tempting promos and discounts, like a discount on your first flight, and also you can earn Carrot Cash, which is basically cash back on the flights that you buy through the Hopper app. That said, in order to get these promos and discounts, you have to book directly through their platform, which is a third-party app, which is not something that I recommend doing. Overall, since Hopper's main feature now is no longer just unique to Hopper, I don't really see a reason why this app would be any better than any other one. Next up is Google Flights, and Google Flights is actually the first place I go to when I'm just starting to search for flights. Unfortunately, Google Flights doesn't actually have an app at this time, but there is a little trick that you can add it to your home screen and make it act kind of like an app. You just search for it in Safari, or you can do it on Android as well. I'm not sure how it works on Android. And click the little share button and click add to home screen. That said, when I'm using Google Flights, I usually just do so on my computer. But the reason that Google Flights is so cool is that it uses the same flight search engine software that professional travel agents use, which is called ITA Matrix. ITA Matrix can be a little bit intimidating for just the normal flight searcher if you don't know all the different techniques, and Google just makes it into a really nice user interface. It pretty much has all the bells and whistles and everything that we've talked about in the other apps so far, but I really like it because it allows you to see prices really quickly. You can see 2 months at a time the prices for each day and quickly scroll through the months, and so you can really check to see what times are cheapest to fly really fast. They're also rolling out a new feature with some routes where they actually guarantee that the price won't go down or they'll give you a refund. That said, since there's no app, it's still a little bit clunky on the phone, so I recommend the computer. Next up is another one that's not necessarily an app, but it's something I highly recommend using, and that is Scott's Cheap Flights, or now they rebranded and they're called Going. It's basically a newsletter. They have both free and paid options where you can set your departure airport, and they'll scour the internet every single day to find the most awesome flight deals and send them directly to your inbox. I'll link to their free plan below, as well as a discount code in case you want to upgrade in the future, but really I just recommend signing up for the free plan first just to check it out. The downside right now is they only offer flight deals that leave from the US, and so if you're living outside the US, it doesn't really help you. But there are some other similar sites if you don't live in the US. For example, Jack's Flight Club is good for people who live in the UK. Daily Drop has flights going out of Canada, and Secret Flying has flights all around the world. All right, on to my 2 important tips. The first is, no matter where you find your flight, always try to book the flight directly on the airline website. Usually it ends up being the same price as what you found on the app, but if it ends up being a little bit more, you have to make a judgment call and decide if the savings you're getting by booking in the app is worth the potential hassle you have if the flight gets canceled or if you run into any problems. I personally would only book through a third-party website if the savings were super significant, like maybe 20% less than what I found on the airline's website. I'd also only book if I was 100% sure that I wasn't going to change my mind on the flight, and also if it was an amount that I wouldn't miss if I had to wait a few months for a refund. Another option you have if you find a cheaper price on an app is to just call up the airline directly, turn on your charisma, tell them that you found a cheaper flight with the exact same flight itinerary on the app, and ask them if they'll match the price. If they're able to verify what you're telling them is correct, a lot of times they'll have no problem matching the price because it just means that they won't have to pay a booking commission to the app. By the way, this same strategy works for hotels as well. Tip number 2 is to remember that none of these apps or websites include every single airline in the world. For example, Southwest Airlines and Ryanair are 2 examples of airlines that often don't show up in these flight search engines and apps. So if you're flying a route that you know that one of these airlines covers, you'll have to go directly to their website to see if they have cheaper prices. Speaking of which, if you're in a foreign country and you're not familiar with all the budget airlines in that country, it doesn't hurt to do a quick Google search, budget airlines in country, to see what pops up. You'll normally get a list of airlines, and then you can compare this list with the flight options that are showing up in Google. And if there's airlines on this list that aren't showing up in Google, it pays to do a quick search directly on their website. I mentioned that Google Flights was my favorite tool for finding cheap flights. And in this video, I show my exact strategy for how I find those cheap flights within Google Flights. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more bite-sized travel hacks, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.